friend of Walter's. I wore this shirt for Walter. I know this is a little toned down from what Walter would wear, but I thought today would be about color. About 3 years ago, I asked Walter if he would sit for a portrait. And he said, yeah, he would do that. And then I asked him, I said, would you sit at a piano knowing his story and that he could no longer play? And that was hard for him. But he thought about it and he said, yeah, I would do that. And so we went over to Calvin Hall at the Presbyterian Church, and he sat at an old upright and proceeded to massage the keys a bit, but I wish that I had heard him when he was still playing concerts. I'm sure he had such wonderful expression that would have been very special. I shot about 80 shots, and I started narrowing them down, hoping to come away with the one best shot of Walter. And I got down to 27, and I thought they were all really good. And so I did do one that you see on display as you come in, but I did a slideshow then of these other 27. And I showed it to Walter. He cried, as you might anticipate. And then I showed it at his birthday party, as Jim mentioned, and he cried. Anyway, I just thought that it's a portrait of kind of who he is. He had so many different expressions that you'll see. I do want to give a thank you to Mark Brown, who helped edit. We couldn't just work from my computer and throw it on the screen, so Mark spent about 3.5 hours with me converting this to a film that is the DVD that you're going to see of those 27 slides. Walter really couldn't even play a scale at this point. Again, this was in 2012. And I know it was very frustrating for him, and yet he seemed to approach what we did with good humor, mixed with sadness. It was a poignant time. I did ask him to kind of show me some of his piano moves, which he obliged. I asked him after we shot them, because I was thinking of putting music with this, and I said, who's your favorite composer? And he said Chopin, and I looked for a Chopin piece that was a good time length to go with these slides, and wasn't able to find one. But I was able to find Clair de Lune, which is by Debussy, and it was interesting. After I did the slideshow and showed it to Walter, and I asked him, I said, Walter, have you played that piece? And he almost teared up, and he said many times. And so I find it quite interesting just to watch him as the music plays, because it's very easy to imagine him playing this as we were shooting. I asked him to wear his rainbow hat, my favorite, the stocking cap. I was thinking also he had a hat he wore sometimes that had a prop on it, but he lost that. Anyway, and I said, and could you wear a colorful shirt? And he didn't disappoint. So you'll see his beautiful attire. If you watch carefully, and I think we'll have enough definition in this light, you may see a reflection of the keyboard in his glasses on a few shots. That's kind of sweet. About 3 from the end, you'll see him, I call it, he's waving goodbye, which I think is poignant too. And then the very last slide, he is in a very pensive state, and I call it what might have been. And it just, to me, it looks like he was thinking about how his life would have been different had he not gotten into the dementia and so on. So with that, I will turn it over to Walter and at the keyboard.
So Jane is going to sing something for us that she has created herself that is describing what Walter was, which is the embodiment of love.
Actually, I met Walter probably in 1997 with Gangaji, and so I've known him in various ways, and I wrote this song actually for my best friend who died when he was 46, and I thought this was kind of appropriate for his light and love. You are with me, forever and a day. Your love caresses me, even when you're not here. I find myself wondering what this life is all about. Then you're guiding me through when this world is changing the tune. I tell you I have found such peace in spirit and in faith. I have found such peace in giving love away. There's a sanctuary that lives in the side. There's a sanctuary where we reside. Slow down, feel your feet on the ground. Breathe in, feel the love that's within, and you'll know that love never dies, and you'll know that love never leaves. It's a blessing that love can survive. This life embraces you in all the things that I do. I find myself wanting to see you again. and the sweetness too. I know you are with me, no matter where I am, you're deep inside of me, a lasting memory. I tell you, I have found such peace in spirit and in faith. I have found such peace in giving love away. I have found such peace in spirit and in faith. Slow it
This is your chance. So if you'd like to share with us about Walter, either come up that way or that way. We'll alternate. I'm always told that I am low tech.
Some of you probably don't know me. My name is Michael Mary, and I met Walter in San Francisco. And I thought I should be one of the first people to speak because I want to raise this a little bit. Because I think I may have known him longer than most people in the room. Before I continue, I need to mention 3 or 4 people who would have really been there if they could have. You obviously knew him a little longer. Okay, thanks. 3 or 4 people who would have been there if they could, if they would have known him, if they could have made it up here, all from the Bay Area originally. His oldest friend is named Tom Kelly. Lived in San Francisco, knew Walter in high school. Tom Kelly knew Walter at Lowell High School, which you just heard, that's where Walter went. And later on, after Walter came out as a gay man, Tom Kelly and him ran into each other at a bar and became good, really close friends. It turned out later on that Tom Kelly also had spent time in Hollywood and had become really good friends with Tina Turner and some other famous Hollywood stars, and Walter got to meet these people. He had a picture in his apartment of, I think it was Tom Kelly or him and Tina Turner. He was very proud of that. Just a little quick chronology. He lived in San Francisco first in Bernal Heights. I don't know exactly the earlier times too well, but he grew up in Bernal Heights. When I met him, he was living on Winfield Street. And I met him in an Al-Anon program, and he said he was looking for a sponsor. And I thought, what a privilege it would be to be a sponsor of such a magnetic and warm and sweet person. So I offered to do it, and he took me up on it. I sponsored him maybe 2 years, 2 or 3 years, that was all. And it was wonderful to be in his life, to hear his stories and his feelings and his secrets and know what goes on. I will say a few things which are pretty well known. He had a difficult childhood. His father was abusive, and his siblings, when he came out, they weren't really nice to him except for one. His younger brother, when he was a teenager, and his father would go on tirades ranting at racial issues and maybe, I don't know about homophobia, about racism and the Third Reich and whatever, some ugly stuff. Walter's brother, Carl, who was younger, would put his hand on Walter's knee and say, "Walter, it's going to be okay. Don't worry about him. Just let it be. You can't fight it." This brother, Carl, was the one who took charge of Walter's life when Walter had to go. Well, he went into a short-term facility in San Francisco, General Hospital. Always saw himself as very fortunate, because he even turned that around, made that an experience. And it was a floor specifically for gay and lesbian people in San Francisco, on the ward in San Francisco General Hospital. So to chronologize again, I was grateful to be a sponsor, and after a while, I took him on a visit up here to our friend Steve was in the back. We drove up the coast, and when we got to Cave Junction, he was listening to some banjo players in the Kirby marketplace, and he said, "You brought me 3 days for this?" I'm not a country bumpkin. But he loved the woods. We stopped everywhere on the beaches, in the woods, and then a year or two later, Steve and me and him took a beautiful walk. It was almost dark. It was Thanksgiving weekend of 1997, I think it was. So, yeah. And we took a walk, and he had very, very good night vision. So he could see. We paced like an Egyptian, very slowly, carefully, just tiptoeing, like they would in Native Americans would do. And he valued silence tremendously. He was very fond of silence. And that was one of the experiences of his life, was that the quiet of that. And when we got back from the little walk in the woods, which was about 20 minutes, we hardly spoke at all, and we could see the car, we could make it out. He just loved silence. He loved being in the woods. It reminded him of his higher power and the joy of nature. And he always loved nature, which is why he liked it up here. And so he moved up here in spring of 1998, stayed for 3 or 4 years, and then he missed his community. His spiritual community, his recovery community, and his gay community, some of which merged together in San Francisco. So he decided to move back in March of 2003, and he stayed for 3 or 4 more years there. Finally realized that Ashland will always have a pull once you've been here. You won't really want to leave for good. So, of course, he moved back in 2007. I helped him move all 3 times, but it was a joy to do so. He never complained. He had 2 cats when I brought him up here. I brought him up again, the first time I brought him up was 1998. We had a moving van, and he had 2 cats. One was Fledermaus, and the other one was Duke, I think. And he would always show such care and love for these animals, and how he just connected so well to them. And I'll mention too that he did put on a recital here right around his, I think it would have been his 62nd birthday, up in the hills somewhere. Maybe my friend can mention exactly where it was. I didn't make that recital, but a lot of people came, and he performed there in a I don't know if it's shack, some sort of a restaurant or a club up there, or in the woods, and a lot of people came. It was wonderful. This was right on his 62nd birthday. And speaking of 62, the last place he really enjoyed living in San Francisco was a cottage at 62 Shotwell Street, near if anybody knows where the Rainbow Grocery is. I have an article written by Paul Hufstedler, and Paul, like I say, met him in a bar in 79 or 80 in San Francisco while he was still drinking, and they became real good buddies. Paul Hufstedler would be here if he could, so would Carl, his brother, and his other friend, best friend from high school, Tom Kelly, who kept track of him all his life. I talked to him when Walter died, of course. They were all pretty shaken, but I think it was a little bit expected. And I might read a poem later, but I'm going to wait and see if any other people have poems to share first, because I've taken enough time. But I will say that I just loved his sense of compassion and love and his sweetness and his caring sense. He would always show a lot of sensitivity. And yeah, so in order, these people cannot make it, and I'm just here to speak for them and tell you how much they would like to be here. Tom Kelly and his brother Carl, and of course Paul Hostiller, he sent an article about Walter that he wrote, 2 pages in the Gay Man's Spiritual Retreat newsletter. Walter never was quiet about the fact that he was a gay man and a man of color. So I wore this hat in his honor, and my mother's graduation scarf, which has beautiful colors. When my mother died, I grabbed it and made it my own, and it has the class of '38, 1 year before Walter was born. And he loved colors, and of course, one more thing, he always wore that rainbow hat, and he had a rainbow umbrella, which I don't have, but I'm going to put up another one and let somebody else come up. Here are the colors that Walter loved. Thank you. I have that article that Paul Hostiller wrote to see if anyone wants it. Yeah, I've a few copies. I've got 5 copies.
Hi, my name's Patty, and I knew Walter for about 8 years, and he came into my life when I was going through one of the very, very most difficult portions of my life, and I was really struggling, and he saw me a lot crying because of the nature of what I was going through, and he would frequently come up to me and put a hand on both shoulders and look me right in the eye and say, "Don't forget, you're beautiful." And I would take that with me throughout every day, and I knew when I was going to see Walter that, oh, I hope Walter tells me I'm beautiful today, because I need it. There was one time my mother was visiting, and my cousin, and I knew Walter was going to be at this function, and so we were there, and afterwards we were talking afterwards, and Walter went up to my mother, who's quite a conservative woman from the Midwest, so you have to take that into consideration. And he goes up to her and goes, "I just want you to know, if I wasn't gay, I would marry your daughter." And he used to tell me this, but I didn't know he was going to go up and tell my mom. And my mom, without missing a beat, just looked at him and said, "Well, you could change." She was desperate to see me get remarried or something. And I just looked at her and said, "Mom, you know it doesn't work that way." So that was really funny. And so after that, that became a joke between Walter and I. And he would come up and give me a hug and say, "You know, I really would marry you." But then I actually heard him saying that to someone else. I didn't feel so special. But I did love that about him, and he really did extend himself to me in a way. And I took him to Shakespeare plays a couple times. We went once at night, and it was great because we got free tickets. But walking for him was hard to see at night, so the next time I made sure we had matinee tickets, and he really enjoyed that. We went on a lot of little walks just up the roads, and when I gave him a ride here countless times. So I was really glad that he was in my life in that way, and he was one of the biggest-hearted, sweetest, most funny, outrageous. And he would just snap back towards the end after he had that near-drowning experience. He would break out into tears, and he would snap back really quick. I would just say to him something like, "But Walter, you're here today. We're all still beautiful." And he'd go, "Oh yeah, that's right. We're all still beautiful." So that's my Walter story.
Hi, I'm Teresa Greer, and I knew Walter from the Senior Center, and when I would be out walking, I would meet him randomly, and we would stop and have a little chat, and it was a wonderful time. At the Senior Center, he was always so kind-hearted. Well, he was always kind-hearted. Gentle soul, such a spirit. And I loved when he sat at our table. He was a little spacey, yes, but aren't we all, from time to time, in our states and conditions and proclivities and whatnots. But I especially like when I met him one-to-one when I was out walking. And there was one particular time, he was coming down the hill to where he lived, and I was walking up and wondering if I was going to make it home. And he came upon me with such a great smile and a huge, huge, friendliest bear hug that went on and on and on and on. And I thought, this is fantastic. I mean, this was beyond what people do with bear hugs. That's acceptably finished and they move on. His went on and on. And then very quietly he went home, and I was walking up the hill, and I thought, what a glorious thing this is. So spontaneous, and no strings and no hidden agenda. It was filled with some kind of vast caring and freedom that I just treasured. And on the way back, I was thinking, this must be one of those grand moments when you can see and feel what I believe is God's gracious love for us that is shining on us and within us. And I was so happy to have this experience with Walter. And so, dear friend and gentle spirit, thanks for the memories, and shalom.
Greetings, my name is Laura DeRocher, and I can't tell you how many times I stood in this very spot with one of these microphones, either singing at a unity service or speaking or both, and Walter was sitting probably third, fourth row on the aisle in a hat, this color, and it lit him up to come to church. It lit him up to be in spirit and remind himself of spirit, and more than once, Walter told his big stories in church. And his two big stories are big stories. I mean, if any one of us got one of these stories in our lifetime, it'd be a big thing. One was about his near drowning and how he, had dementia after that. And one was how he was held at gunpoint at some point in his life, and he, through his fear, managed to say, "I love you," to the man who was holding the gun. And the man dropped the gun and apologized and cried and said, "I'm just hungry, I need food, I need money." And Walter's life was spared. And that's what Walter represents to me, is that love and the willingness to love despite somebody coming at you that doesn't feel loving. No matter how many times I sang or spoke, or I met Walter at a 7 a.m. meeting almost daily for a couple of years, he never remembered me. And it was okay, because I'd go up to him and I'd introduce myself each time, and I'd say, "Walter, hi," and he'd say, "I don't know you." And I'd say, "I know you don't know me. My name's Laura, but I know you." And he'd smile, and he'd give me a hug, and he'd, say what a nice smile or something. He never proposed to me, Patty, though. I don't know. But he was never guarded, he was never trepidatious. He was always just open and trusting and loving, and that is such a lesson for me. So Walter was a concert pianist, and I play piano. I've never been a concert pianist, but I realized, he couldn't play in his last years, and it was very frustrating to him. And I've been living in a house these last 4 months with a beautiful upright grand Yamaha, and I realized 2 days ago that I had played that piano maybe half a dozen times in 4 months. That's a travesty. So I have been dedicated to playing more often. I've played the last 3 days, and when I was playing today, I realized this song I was playing might be a beautiful tribute to Walter and his piano playing and his effect on many of us. So I have a shortened version of a song we all know and love, and I'm going to play it on the piano. Thank you, Walter, for your love and your light. We have to do this concert style.
Hi, my name is Steve. Hi, Steve Howard, and I have an interesting piece of history with Walter. I was living. Judy, do you want to come up and share right now? I think you should share right now. This is Judy's landlord. Judy was Walter's landlord for the last 10 years in Ashland. Has an amazing history. Love her to come up here and share some of her many different stories. But she's a little shy, so I'm not sure. But anyways, I was living with my mom up in Corvallis, and Stevie ran an ad on Craigslist that Walter needed a caregiver. And so I answered that. I came down. I made a call. I talked to him, and I came down. And I arrived, and Jim was there, and his other former caregiver, Bodie, was there, and Walter wasn't there. I'm like, yeah, I'm here to see Walter. And it's like, oh, really? It's like, yeah, I made an appointment, 3 o'clock appointment, and he wasn't there. But he's probably wandering around town somewhere. And so 2 hours later, he shows up, and we have the interview, and then I go back up to Corvallis. I load my car, a little Civic, and then he calls at 10 o'clock at night and says, I found someone else that wants to do it. It's like, really? Okay. So I went to bed. I kept my car packed and just whatever, you know. And then he calls early in the morning. He said, "Hey, would you like to do it? Please do it." It's like, how do I know if you're going to change your mind when I'm halfway down I-5? Can we get this in writing or something? But anyways, I took the chance. I came down here. I was his caregiver for 2 years, and one day my mom passed away in Corvallis, and I always told her that I was going to take her ashes to India, and I took half of her ashes. There was some kind of thing between our family. Some of them were supposed to go up to Canada somewhere, in a family cottage. So I took half of them to the Angeles. And he said that he wanted to come. I said, Walter, I'm going in 10 days. It's like, I've always wanted to go since I was a little kid. It's like, well, if we can somehow figure out, I already have my ticket, you know, if we can get you on a plane in 10 days, that means visa, passport, ticket. We went down to San Francisco. Actually, I met Tom Kelly and went out to dinner with him. We went to Try Visa International, and we got his visa, passport, bought a ticket in 10 days. We were flying on the way to India, and we stayed in India for 2 months. And he said to me that he never wanted to come back, actually, when we were there. And I said, I'd probably be in prison right now if I left India there. But he did come back. He said it was the best time he ever had in his life. And I made a little book with some of the photographs of us. He got on a camel once. They take pictures of you, you know, you climb up this ladder and get on the camel on the beach in West Bengal, in Orissa. And I said, well, let's do it the next day. And he's like, I said, you know, we could probably negotiate and get a good price on rupees if we just like, you know, hold off and we'll do it the following day. And so like, I wake up from a nap and this little Indian guy's knocking on the door and he's like, yeah, your old man, he owes 500 rupees. I have photographed. Give me 500 rupees. I was like, really? Anyways, I hand over the rupees, and I got all these nice pictures of Walter on a camel. He snuck out, and he went up and got on the camel himself. I wasn't there when it happened. He was very, he was, at one point actually, probably one of the funniest things that happened, we were in Orissa, and I told him that I was starting to get sick, and I said, Walter, I need some time by myself. I got you hooked into this Ayurvedic treatment thing. You're gonna walk down 1 block, and you're gonna get your 2 oil massages a day, and they're gonna feed you all kinds of nice food and all that. Okay? Can you handle it? It's like, no, you need to come with me. Like, Walter, I'm getting sick. I need a little time by myself. You know, it's like, and he said, you're fired. In India, I don't think you could get back by yourself. So anyway, we worked through that, and he was able to get down to the block. He did get lost once, and he explained how he found himself. These little kids like pointed him to where the pink house was, and he made it back. But you know, as you know, he made it back to Ashland in one piece. But it was an amazing experience being his caregiver. I have some of my friends like Flip back here, who was a big part of his life, who came with one of my buddies in Ashland when I first came here, and we hung out a lot. And so Flip got to know Walter, and Jen became his therapist for a little while. So he became obviously he was a celebrity in Ashland. So many people knew him, and he definitely affected my life in many profound ways. I took him to India, and he met my spiritual teacher, and he actually took on a spiritual name. I'll probably have many spiritual names from many different gurus, you know, but Abhay Chaitanya Das, which means, I don't even know what it means.
Servant of fearless consciousness.
That's it, servant of fearless consciousness. Yeah, so you read the book more than I probably. But I put together some photographs of some of the places we went. Seen him swinging on a banyan tree, and he had a great time in India. I'm going to pass this around, and I just hope to get it back by the end. There's only one copy of this, so I hope to get it back. And yeah, Walter will always keep it in mind. And there's a lot of people in India, actually, when I put it on Facebook that he passed away, or that he was getting near to pass away, people from India that I had met, from Brazil, and you know, they were saying, oh, he was such a wonderful guy, and I'm so sorry to hear that, and we'll always remember him. And he really actually, he had connected with people from all over the world. There's this, I have a picture of him, it's actually in here, of this Russian girl interviewing him, a live Skype interview. When he was in a holy place in Navadvip, India, and she was Skype, doing a live interview to Skype to her Russian friends in India, like the Russian congregation of the Hare Krishna movement in India was speaking like that. And Walter was giving an interview. Here it is, right there.
I wasn't sure if I was going to get up here, but I'm shaking and crying. So the reason that I'm even saying that is that I think one of Walter's greatest legacies is that he'd cry. And he'd cry in public. And that's when I really connected so deeply with him, because he'd be sharing his greatest angst, or his greatest sadness, or his greatest connective way of connecting in. And for someone to cry in this culture, especially a man, we know all those stories around that. So I'll tell a quick Walter story. Went to see him in March. And he was in and out of lucidity. He'd be kind of spacing out, talking about something that we weren't talking about in the moment, and then he'd come back. And there was a gentleman in the room. I believe he was new to the facility. And he came over and he said hello to Walter. And Walter looked at him straight in the eye and said, "Be well, be healthy." And so in the middle of his not being lucid, he'd come back to his heart and he'd make sure that he was connecting with someone. So I just look at him as a walking heart. And the other legacy is wearing color. And on the way over here, I had this 2-second thought about, oh, it's, a memorial service in color. I was like, oh my God, it's Walter. So these, to me, to be able to cry and wear color and be heart-centered and also say to people, looking them right in the eye, you are beautiful. And he'd be in this room, and it was so disturbing for him not to be able to come to Unity. He loved Norma so much, he loved the music, he loved everything, so it was just such an honor to see him. And he'd be in the circle, and he'd raise his hands, and he'd shuffle over somebody who would make sure that he's in the circle and holding hands, and it was just a really beautiful thing. The other legacy is sharing your gift. And his frustration was that he could not do his piano anymore. So thank you, Laura, for playing such a beautiful piece of honoring. So I'm not going to do it right now, but what I would like to say about that is what I said at my Unity talk last week. Is if you have a gift, if you have an instrument, if you have a voice, I think Walter would love you to share that. And you don't need to know what you're doing at the piano. The secret is play all the white keys, you'll sound really good, or play all the black keys and you'll sound really good. Or if you have a trumpet that's collecting dust. And do that if it feels right, but to me it's in honor of anyone who's not here anymore, that we can continue celebrating our gifts and sharing them. And I keep on coming back, no matter how good of a concert pianist he was, I'm sure he was brilliant. His greatest gift to me was his smile and his, I want to say, direct love. I felt directly loved by this man and his presence. So, I'm going to end with playing the Native American chording flute, which I used to play at Unity. I play at Unity, and he would love it. And the reason I'm playing it is because the last 2 times I played in the prayer circle here, I was playing, and then all of a sudden I heard this message from Walter. Don't stop, it's Gabriel's horn. Okay. So in honor of our beloved Walter, I'm going to play this. And Norma talked about this trumpet that's being heard by people all over the world. And I was like, no, that's Walter. That's Walter. He's pretty powerful. And now that I know that he's been all over the world, I'm sure it's him. So as I play this, just allow the sound and the breath of the music in any way that you want to say hello or goodbye. Just let the breath of the sound just take it right up to our sweet, beloved Walter. If I can do this because I'm shaking. Donna Benjamin. Walter, if you don't remember that name, it's okay.
Hi, my name's Rachel, and I met my match when I met Walter. I had met him on several different occasions. Before I moved up here, I was visiting my grown children and met him in this little room up at the Presbyterian Church, and he would sit on the couch with his feet propped up, and somebody, usually Jim, getting him his cup of coffee, and anyway, you know, after the meeting, when I first met him, I introduced myself to him because I just felt that warmth kind of emanating from him, and he gave me a big hug. And he said, "I'm a hug slut." Me too. We both shared that love of just, you know, sharing affection with others, and so yeah, he was my match. He was my hug slut buddy. And you know, when after I moved up here, the first Valentine's Day that I was here, I didn't have really any, you know, special person to share that with, and I made this sign with all different color markers, and I put different doodads on there, and the caption read "Free Hugs." And I came down, I went to like the Department of Human Services and got to hug some people there, and I thought, okay, so I'm going to go over to, and Walter definitely came to mind. I thought, I'm going to go over to the senior center. It's lunchtime there, and so I didn't have formal permission to go in there and hug people. So I was actually asked to leave, but not before I had to get my hug from Walter. And I took my sign over to him, and he just lit up. And so, yeah, he's, I'm hugging him. Thanks.
I'm Maxine. I live here in Ashland. I'm thrilled to see so many friends of Walter here. July of 1999, Walter helped me by telling me about an apartment in his building where I could move from Grants Pass. And I knew him from fellowship. I lived there until last month. And the first, I guess it was 2 years that I was there, Walter lived, there was 4 units in the apartment building, and he did the gardening. And the landlords didn't do it. Walter did it. We had individual plots with flowers in them and then a big lawn. And so he, when he was getting ready to leave, he installed beautiful flowers in everybody's individual plots in that central area. And then when I saw him several months later, he told me that was something he was very proud of. And I kept the flowers going as long as they could, and I kept the lawn going until last month. And so I loved being around Walter, and I'm just, like I said, just delighted to see how he affected people in the community. And I did get to hear him play at a church in Medford, his concert work, and it was a very special moment and experience. He was very, very gifted and skilled. Thank you for doing this today.
Hi, I'm Ann Johnson, and I know Walter from around Ashland at the fellowship. And I just went, well, while he was in Skylark at the end, I went to see him, and there was a picture on the wall beside his bed of Snoopy dancing, you know, where it shows the repeat of the legs. And I swear to God, I will always think of Walter that way, because that's how I saw him. His joy was just totally contagious. I loved the way he didn't speak much, but when he spoke, you listened, because somehow he cut through all that was going on to a few key words that were meaningful. And I know him through his love of animals, because this is Leela, who was his last companion. This is Leela, his last companion, and she now resides at my house. And so she has a great home, and I live with a lot of cats. It's a sanctuary for unadoptable cats. But Leela is such a love. She loves people. I know Walter's love, because this cat just loves people. Well, anybody who comes in, Leela is there to greet them. And I wish I had the picture, I can't find it, of her. She's heavy, and she likes to lie on her back with her feet up. And she's just there, totally willing for anybody to rub her belly. So she was loved, still is loved, and Walter, we do miss you.
Still alive. Okay, good.
My name is Jamie, and I am an alcoholic. Before I got sober, well, I got married right after my graduation from high school. And I married a man that had a lot of similar interests to me, and he was finishing up with college, and he worked for an oil company, and they offered him a job in Oklahoma, and that's where I had my kids. And we had been married almost 10 years, and he came home, of course the kids were outside playing, they told me he was gay. And my world just, and that's when I really started drinking, is when I found out that I moved up here. Well, it's been about 8 years now, and got disability for mental illness that I have. And you know, I met Walter, and there was a connection between us, and there was something in his eyes that met something in my eyes, and he would say to me something like, "You're changing. You're changing." And he wore his spirit on his sleeve. And you know, he's the first gay guy that I really loved. And that gay guy that I married died from AIDS. And so today, you know, my kids are older, 40 and 38. But today, I have a lot of gifts from the program. And I'm proud to be here, and I have worked on my shame and guilt, and I don't have to carry that around anymore. So thanks.
Hope you're listening, Walter. I wore this especially for you. I was going to read something, but I think I just want to talk about how Walter affected my heart. I met him probably 9 years ago when Bob and I moved back from Williams. And he had the same line to me that he used excuses. He said, if you weren't married and I wasn't gay, he just had the same line for everyone of us, but that's okay. Every time I would see him, either on the street or at a meeting or whatever, my heart would just be affected so much by his presence. And I feel I have to make an amends to you, Walter, because I didn't visit you in Skylark, because I have memories of Bob up there, and I couldn't go there. So I remember Walter working out in the gym and going to meetings and walking, and if he needed a ride to the senior center for the free lunch, if I wasn't busy, I would take him down there. And he was always early, like he'd go to a 9 o'clock meeting, so we'd get down to the senior center around 10:15. And so I would spend about an hour with him. We would walk around and talk, and then sit, and we would talk about how old we were, because we were very similar in age, and I was either a year younger or he was a year older, just sort of the same way he dealt with his sobriety. He wasn't sure whether he was 26 years sober or 25 years sober. But what he loved, I mean, he was so spiritual, and I loved to be around him and share my spirit with him. And I would give him energy, Reiki energy, if so many people understand what that is, because he really felt it would help his brain. And so whenever we could, I gave him some energy work, and he was just such a delight to be with. And I think Bob was still at home when I was meeting Walter or taking Walter to the senior center. And no matter what kind of a mood I was in, when I would go to the meeting, after I was with Walter, there was nothing wrong. I was not down in the dumps. I always felt hopeful and happy and smiling. So he really had a big effect on me, and like everyone else here in this room, I'm really going to miss him.
I'm just going to take off on something that Charlotte just said. Walter was a deeply spiritual man. He was involved in a lot of spirituality. He loved coming to unity. Before unity, he loved coming to Unitarian. before Unitarian, he loved going to Unity. He also went to satsang twice a week for 5 years. And because he is such a love, he didn't drive. He said that it was the best decision he ever made for the world. He was always given rides by those going to satsang, even if they had to come from Talent to pick him up to take him there. I was his caregiver for about 2.5 to 3 years, somewhere in there. I think Walter affected me, and it's all unclear. Walter would, I'm going to step back a ways from what I was going to say. When he would go to Unity or Unitarian or satsang, I would ask him, so what was the topic? What was the sermon? What was it? Because he'd be saying it was wonderful. It was just terrific. And he'd start crying even. And I said, but what was the topic? What was Norma talking about? And he couldn't tell me. But I know why. He was not his brain was no longer able to take in the ideas. It was not a rational thing. It was absolutely a spiritual, loving thing. He was experiencing and taking it in totally with his heart. It was so much what I experienced with them as long as I knew them, especially after the drowning. But I also, as his caregiver, I had to make sure that when I wasn't there after dinner, that his time was time where he was experiencing satisfaction and pleasure. And so we had a whole bunch of videos, a whole bunch of DVDs. One of his closest friends happens to own a video store, and so he got donations. But there were really only about 12 to 15 of the videos that he kept recycling. And I kept them in a separate box, because those are the ones that when I would say, okay, these are the possibilities tonight, there's this, and it was always the spiritual ones. He loved one that was called Divining the Divine. And what it was different people of different religious and spiritual traditions who would simply, they had gathered together and they were simply sharing their own personal experience and beliefs about divinity. And Walter just loved it. And you know, he had a big advantage because he had dementia. So he could do it 2 nights in a row. It was totally new the second night. You know, I mean, there are certain gifts to dementia for sure. He loved one of them that was the Dalai Lama talking to a group of Dominican priests about the Gospel of St. Matthew. They had invited him to give the Buddhist perspective on that. And Walter just loved that. He loved anything that was spiritual. He loved coming here. He loved going to Unitarian. He loved satsang. He loved the spirituality of AA. He had something that he said to groups of people sometimes when he would share. It was a mathematical thing. He was talking about spirit. He was talking about the divine. He was talking about our connection to it. And he said, 1 plus 1 equals 1. But do math. So he really was, he was an extraordinary spiritual person. And so he was always generally pretty happy. He and I talked a lot of times about life and about, a lot of times we would talk about reincarnation. And I would tell him that I thought that the theory of reincarnation would be that the person prior to conception would decide what the big issues would be in that next lifetime. With that in mind, would then ask for certain types of people to be in his life, including a very, very difficult father, including dealing with life in the body of a gay man. Okay? And we would talk about this kind of thing. But he would ask sometimes, so why would I have chosen to have dementia? And I said, to me it's obvious. It, like some of the other experiences in your life, was forcing you to choose between resistance and acceptance. And you are continually in the position where you have to choose or resist. And you usually choose to accept and to surrender to it. I was so touched by the video this time as well as 3 years ago, because the facial expressions did show so much pain. They showed such a sense of loss. But I know from having been around Walter so often that he did, although he frequently would make reference to it as his greatest loss, he also accepted the reality of it. And he eventually came to peace with it, where this is just what is. And he knew that he had to accept it or suffer. So, next.
I wanted to share something here. I don't know if any of you can see it, but it's Walter, actually. I took a 1-minute video clip of him in India, and I'm going to see if you can hear it. But it's him in India expressing how much he loved being there at that time. I'm going to see.
How are you liking your stay in India here so far? There are no words to express how I feel about living here. All I can say, I'm here now, and I know love is the rest. Do you want to come back to India ever again? Yes, today. Can you tell us anything about your experiences so far in India? By putting in one word, it would be uplifting. I am totally blown away, as people might say these days. But I just feel so enriched and new, and like a new flower, a new rose comes out of a bush every spring. That's it, and my pleasure.
Copyrighted words from Walter. A rose comes out of a bush each spring.
Should we do?
Can we have the St. Francis prayer? St. Francis' prayer was his favorite prayer.
of thy peace. Hear this prayer of mine, that with this prayer of mine, day by day, oh Lord, I pray, oh Lord, I pray, oh Lord, I
Walter never thought of himself as being a giving person, which you and I find to be not rational. He would complain, he'd say that everybody's talking about being of service, but I'm never involved in serving anyone. I'm just not doing anything. I'd say, are you kidding, Walter? No. I told him that he probably in any room, he was probably providing the greatest service of all. And I told him what that service was he was allowing himself to be the object of love. So he was letting others love him and care about him and helping him in that. But he also, clearly from what a number of people have shared, he didn't really have the form of service down. He didn't make coffee, he didn't clean up, he didn't do that kind of stuff. But he was always serving the well-being of others. When he would, in a different way than was described by several people before, when he would be at the senior center and he would see an elderly woman sitting alone and not looking great, he would go right up to her and look her in the eyes and would say, has anybody told you today yet how beautiful you are? And he didn't do it as a shtick. He did a lot of things as a shtick. Like, if he didn't know your name, he would call you sweetheart if you were wearing a dress. And he would call you brother if you weren't. But that was just a shtick because he didn't know what your name was. He couldn't remember. But he did this with the explicit intention of lifting that woman's spirits. And I saw him do it any number of times. And he was doing it straight from his heart. And he was serving them. You know, when he would come up to someone who was newly sober and say, keep coming back. It'll get easier. You know, we want you to come back. He was offering service. He used to, in different meetings, I'm sure he was many times in San Francisco, but here, he would be the greeter at a meeting so that he could hug people. Okay. But he also very clearly did want to welcome them. He wanted them to feel welcome. So he he lived the prayer of St. Francis. Now, I'm very curious. Norma, do you have any impressions you'd like to share with us? By the way, Norma and Unity is very graciously allowed us to use this space free of charge.
We have so many slots a year that we can use free of charge, and it just seems perfect to use it for Walter's memorial. Walter was such a big part of our Unity services, as Laura and Donna were saying, and he would not just sit there and be quiet, as they were saying, but he would speak out in the middle of the service. You know, he would just burst forth with things, and it was always fine. Everybody just felt his heart and felt that that was a great thing for him to do. And just been sitting here thinking about how he accomplished what we talk about at Unity, that we're not separate from the divine, but the divine is in us, and that we are one with the divine. And I've been feeling while we've been sitting here that he really accomplished being an open door. Like Jesus said, you know, knock on the door and it shall be opened. And it feels like he was this being that accomplished through every hard thing he went through, opening and opening, until he became an open door. And I've been having this feeling that he's big now, like he was really big up above this room, smiling and joyfully looking down on us and saying, you are that too. You know, and I felt that he accomplished something in this lifetime, that he opened the door, that he became the wise fool. And it was almost a sacred geometry thing I was experiencing here, of like he did something in his sacred geometry of his life that accomplished a shift in consciousness that opened a way for us. And I can feel it in myself. Today I feel like it is finished, like he did something that enabled us to walk through into something, a new way of being that is so exuberantly, humanly real. You know, his honesty, his laughter, his way of always inviting us to the present moment. He did something, he accomplished it. I just feel like his life was complete. And when he had that near-death experience, then he came to Unity afterwards, and I think that did something to him that helped him complete his life, you know, because it was visiting the other side, and I had so many feelings about that. Like, I felt so sad about picturing him being in the bottom of the swimming pool, and he would say to me, I had to go through that, you know. I went and I almost died, Norma. I died, and I came back. And I think when he went through that, he really did probably go and touch the doorway of heaven and come back. And then in those last few months that he had with us, he opened even further. And he accomplished it. So I just want to thank you, Walter, for the lifetime that you lived. And we love you, and we feel the effect of your life. We're all feeling it. We're so blessed, and I just want to thank every person here that helped him to get where he wanted to go and to do what he did, because you were all his allies in accomplishing this. And we're just so thankful, Walter, for your life. Thank you. See you right there, smiling at us.
My name is Harmony, and a few months back, or half a year back or so, I was talking with Walter, and we discovered, I don't know how, but we discovered that our mutual favorite song was St. Francis. Excuse me. So I had a copy made for him special, and he probably misplaced it somewhere, so I had another copy made for today. And
of course, he always used to tell me I was beautiful, and I never got asked to be married, but that's okay too. But in honor of Walter and his forgetting names, I have a joke to tell, and this is in honor of course, his humor too, which I also had in common with Walter. Many of us probably did. So it's usually about two old ladies, but since it's Walter, I'll tell the joke about these two old men. And they had been friends for all their lives, grew up together. And all of a sudden, though, one friend forgot his best friend's name. And of course, he was mortified, humiliated. He couldn't walk up to his friend and say, "What's your name?" And so he thought, "I know, I'll take him to lunch, and surely somebody will walk up and call him by his name." So he took him to lunch, but nobody came up. So I thought, oh man, what am I going to do? So he said, "I know, I'll go over to his house and I'll look on his desk and surely there will be a bill or something addressed to him with his name on it." So he did that, and no, there was nothing on the desk. So he thought, okay, this is it, egg on my face. I'm going to have to just walk up to my best friend for all my life and say, "What is your name?" So he did. He walked up to his best friend and said, "What is your name?" And his best friend looked at him and said, "When do you need to know by?"
This is Keisha. She's the one that dragged Walter back up from the bottom of the pool so that he could be safe and so we'd have him for a few more years.
I've been shaking and nauseous and all kinds of physical things, and I'm sweating, and so I guess I'm supposed to be up here to say something, otherwise I'll collapse. I didn't know Walter like you all knew him. I knew him in a different way. I first met Walter within a few seconds of asking Ascended Master Jesus Christ to place me on the path of love. It was information I had received that week, and I said, okay, I'm ready to do this. So I asked. And then I chose a path in the pool. It was different than the path I had been on. I moved, and I was on this path, turned around and started to do the backstroke. And a few seconds later, on that path, my foot touched something. So I stopped and looked down. The first vision I had of Walter was his spine. I saw his spine, and it was all wrapped in a package in the fetal position. And of course, I saw his back. But I didn't think there was anything wrong. I just thought, here's somebody meditating at the bottom of the pool. Isn't that great? Because I've done that. But then I felt bad that I had hit him. And I wanted to say, oh, I'm sorry to disturb your meditation. And so I'll try to not make this part too long. But so then I just stood and looked at him. And you got to understand that he was there, and I had dove into the pool very close to him, but I didn't see him because the pool was really kind of hazy. It was in the evening. And nobody else around him realized he was in trouble, and they were only a few yards away. So I didn't see him either. I wasn't in the pool at the time that it happened. So it was about 4 minutes, or longer actually. Anyway, so I kind of observed him, and I said, gee, he's awfully still. And then I didn't see any bubbles or anything, you know. So I swam over to these folks that should have seen him, and they said, "Oh no, we didn't see anybody." And right then I knew, I got to get over there. So I swam back, and all I could think of was, get his head above water, get his head above water, get his head above water. And that's what I did. So the first time I saw him, his face was nestled in my arm, lifted him up, and he was light as a feather, and his face was purple. And then I swam over to the side, and then the rest unfolded. The first time I saw his eyes, they were black, because his pupils had dilated, meaning he had gone over, you know, but he just didn't take that final step. So, about exactly, well, a year later, I still hadn't met Walter, and I just didn't feel like, I didn't want to interfere with this process and stir things up. I knew that, you know, it was a difficult situation, and I just, you know, I just felt shy about that. But then it was getting closer and closer to that day, the 1-year anniversary, and I felt a big hole in my heart, and I had to admit, I have to meet this man, I have to look into his eyes. And luckily I found, going through my papers, I found Jim's number, called him and said, "Do you think it's okay if I come and meet Walter now?" And he said, "Sure." So I did, and I met him on Sunday evening, August 4th, 2013, exactly to the hour of the year anniversary of when I had found him on the pool bottom. So it worked out that way. But so we met, and we spent about an hour together, and I sat kind of at his, not at his feet, but, you know, I was a little lower than he was, and we were looking at each other. And, you know, I just said to him, "I just love you. I love you." You know, and it was sort of like, wow, I really love you. And he was sort of like, in that place of, well, why do people love me? So anyway, and then, you know, I didn't spend much time with him, but over the past few years, I did go to his birthday party last year. And then I used to escort him at the recital hall to music, at chamber music concerts, because I worked that hall. So I'd see him there and tell him, okay, there's a step up, keep going, you know, help him go up the steps. And I did get to spend several days with him at the very end. And he passed on my Father's Day of passing, May 11th. And I played Hebrew music, and I talked to him in Latin, I played him Requiem from Morton Lords and other things, and sang to him. So we shared the music during that time. I thought that would probably be a good thing. But so he lived 2 years, 9 months, and 1 week after his drowning episode. And in contemplating, you know, why did he come back and why did he live? Not that I knew him that well, but I did know him on a deep level that was kind of an inexplicable, not of this world level. And it's obvious to say yes, to give more love, to be able to bring out more love. But I really feel that he was here. What I observed and what he said to me, and other people have said this, but this is not because they said it. I mean, I already knew this, you know, but it's echoing what other people have said, including Jim. That when you saw him kind of be like dazzled by the fact that all this love was coming in, his openness, his innocence, his, you know, questioning that and delighting in it, was for him to really receive more love. And wasn't just from people, it was receiving the real love, or this essence of love. And when we open up ourselves to feeling divine love, and other people can see that,
That's the way we can give love, is to open ourselves up that way. And so I think he got an opportunity to really receive, and Norma said that too, to receive it, love, his source of love, and to embrace it, and just to let it be and to shine. Boy, did I see that the first time I met him. Actually, the second time I met him. I love you, Walter. I love you. I love you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Al. I'm a proud member of Unity here in Ashland. I knew Walter, I feel, after hearing all the stories about this much, but he impacted me. I'll try to do like the eagle, this much. In Lakota, which is my spiritual path for 25 years, we say Metakuyasin, which means all my relations. We're related to everyone and everything. And Walter lived big. Whenever I would see him, he'd look at me and I'd look at him, and he'd say, I love you, brother. And I'd look back at him and I'd say, I love you, brother. And we both start crying like little babies. It was the best thing ever. So I miss him. I didn't know him that well, but I miss him terribly. And I know he's in a better place. I was thinking of a silly thing to say, and I think I'm going to say it. To me, he was a combination of Gandhi and Dr. Seuss and Jerry Garcia. Anybody relate to that? Do I hear an amen? He brought such joy to me, such laughter, and he helped me to open my heart even more. And in this community, I think I'm known as a pretty big-hearted guy, but I'm trying to be a little better each day, and walk in a good way, the good red road, as we say in Lakota. So it's good to be here today to share memories, and I love you, Walter, and I miss you. In Lakota, Peshikila is I love you in Lakota. Peshikila and Kola, K-O-L-A, is friend. Peshikila, friend. Peshikila Kola. Aho, Mitakuyase.
Okay. Well, I wasn't thinking of anything, but as I was here, it occurred to me he died May 11th, and it was about 3 weeks ago or so, and in the past 3 weeks, I've noticed I've been, my wife will text me from work, and because we have odd schedules, and the last 3 or 4 texts I've made some, we've been married a long time, and I've obviously said I love you and said nice things to her, but now I texted, like one time I wrote, well, that's because you're a hot babe. And that was another time I called her a studette. And that's a little much for her. She's a very reserved and very introverted person. For some of you who know her, there's not too many, but anyway, those new phrases really delighted her, and she came home and she said, I'm a hot babe. And she'd give me this big hug, and it just occurred to me that I think Walter was in the air. And so thank you, Walter. And I'll say that I've known Walter a long time. I knew him a little bit in San Francisco, very vaguely, and met him here when he moved up here, so really known him about 17 years. And one day we were out walking, my wife and I, downtown Ashland, and bumped into Walter. And this is when he was well and all that. And he went right up to my wife, and he knew her, and put his hands on her shoulders and said, "You're just," I forget the words exactly, but you know how he would be, very demonstrative, telling me just how gorgeous and beautiful she was. And she's looking over at me and saying, "Lessons? Lessons?" So it took me a while, Walter, but I'm catching on. And last thing I'll say is I saw him 2 days before he died. I went up a handful of times to visit him while he was at Skylark. And he was not really able to communicate like we can. You know, he was on his bed, he was lying down, I knelt down there and stayed with him about a half hour. And he knew, I think he knew who I was. I told him, and he'd open his eyes a little bit, and he seemed to recognize me. And what little I could really say, that he couldn't seem to respond other than maybe hold my hand a little tighter. But right before I left, I said I had to go, and but that I said, "God will take good care of you." And then he went like that. So I felt very good. So that's all. Thank you. Love you all.
Is Kathy in the room? Good. She'll explain.
I'll explain. Hi.
Hi.
My name is Kathy Dunn, and I am an alcoholic. Thank you. I've known Walter for many years, and at one particular transition in his life, he stayed at my home, which is a little cottage in the woods up Ashland Mine Road, for about a week. And it's a tiny cottage. I slept in my bed. There are no doors, except for a bathroom door. And he'd lay in my living room on a nice sleeping mat. And as we were going, nodding off to sleep, we would shout out the names of hot men. Turns out we had very similar tastes in men, which were varied. And I remember one conversation where we had a lengthy conversation about the comparative attributes of Antonio Banderas and Brad Pitt, or Brad Pitt. And I think Walter and I were married in some other lifetime. I was fortunate enough to go to Skylark and see Walter around Christmas time. And that was right before, I understand, he made a significant downward trend. And after visiting with him, I wrote down notes because I felt it was just so important, and I'm a poet. And so I wrote this poem about that experience. Walter Skylark. I find him singing Christmas songs in a circle of wheelchairs at his last address. Our skybound skylark, Walter. We hug, embracing lifetime after lifetime. Kiss and hold hands like sisters, schoolgirls, sassy hookers strutting dangerous streets. The fleet is in and it is on, oh holy night. Me and my Buddha drag queen wearing his rainbow crocheted crown. Snug in this sing-along scene, he trumpet blares, Christ the Savior is born, rocking the house in tones sparkling as a happy angel's halo, dazzling as a spinning disco ball. Alter ego Graziella della Crappa is smiling with neon lipstick. And this soul, fashioned of brilliance, serenity, silly putty, sweetness, and sex, gives it all he's got, and he's still got it all.
more than most will ever get or give. Remembering his mortal name or mine matters not at all. He knows me true, and I know him too. With his full self, he meets my full eyes and says, all there is shine, and those who shine. His lips touch my nose, my lips touch his whiskers, in a kiss of bliss without boundaries. This last one, this time around the wide, wild universe of skylarks and love. And in closing, as many people have said, they've given Walter a lot of rides home. And I understand he used to sing the Carol Burnett ending song with them. I'm going to sing it very slowly, and as Walter did, with mindfulness for the meaning and the feeling of every word, and you can join in as you like. I'm so glad we had this time together, just to have a laugh and sing a song. Seems we just get started, and before you know it, it's the time we have to say so long. So long, Walter. We'll see you around.
Not bad for winging it in the afternoon. Okay. So we finished celebrating Walter's life, our own lives with Walter, and we have to be out of here in a half an hour. But you certainly can continue to talk among yourselves. And then two things. We're going to replay the video, but on a laptop on the back table. So if you want to see that again. And also there's the book that I pointed out to you before, the memory book. It was created by Skylark, but it's perfect. The book and DVDs of that, of the video, and now the video itself that'll appear on Facebook, or not Facebook, but on YouTube, is primarily for the benefit of his family who couldn't be here, and all of his friends in San Francisco. So if you'd like to add to the book, it'll be the YouTube showing will be probably in about a week or so. Okay.
I just wanted to tell you that Joanne told me that, did you see, it was like a commercial for Senior Center?
Oh, yeah.
Just for a few minutes. Walter was sitting having lunch.
I know. Every year around this time, for the last 3 years, there's an appearance of Walter and of me at the Senior Center for United Way. So I've never seen it myself. I've just told about it. Okay. So thank you so much for sharing.